Hello everyone, my name is Nirmal Matthew and today I'll be exploring the plasticity of the brain and its responses to experiences, knowledge, aging, and other stimuli. Brain plasticity, or neuroplasticity, is the brain's ability to rewire itself and adapt its structure in response to new experiences, learning new information, and other stimuli. It is well documented that repeated actions that specifically stimulate and engage the brain cause improvements in processing power and decision making. The age of the person also significantly impacts their brain plasticity, making it critical to continue learning as you grow older to avoid cognitive decline. David Eagleman's writing From the Brain, A Story of You explicitly supports the idea that plasticity is at its greatest during childhood and adolescence. The young brain is capable of higher levels of motor learning, language acquisition, and adaptation. Upon exiting adolescence, the brain still maintains strong yet decreased plasticity. The skill-building process is not as intuitive as years prior, but things are still grasped relatively quickly. Older age is when plasticity begins to diminish, and it becomes increasingly more important to maintain function and engage in stimulating mental exercises and activities to combat cognitive decline. Figure 1 verifies this, as we see the graph illustrates the various social and motor skills the brain specializes in learning during the early years of life. Following this, we see the focus our brain's neurons employ regarding social and cognitive functions. Some key mechanisms that drive brain plasticity include synaptic pruning. Synaptic pruning is the brain's way of trimming neurons that are not being utilized consistently in order to make way for new synapses that are constantly processing the information we use on a daily basis. This biological process maintains the efficiency of the brain and reorganizes the mind for greater function. Functional reorganization. The brain is able to shift tasks across multiple networks when experience, emotion, or injury changes what is needed in the human mind. Research shows that other parts of the brain can partially take over and compensate for lost function. This is often found in physically impaired individuals who have lost partial control of their motor skills. Neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the creation of new neurons. Newer research has challenged the previously held belief that this only occurred early in life. Studies have now found that adults can continue forming neurons, particularly in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a region of the brain primarily centered around learning and memory retention. Newly created neurons help support memory formation, emotional regulation based on prior experiences, and malleability. So what does the research say? What is currently trending in the research surrounding neuroplasticity? First and foremost is non-invasive brain stimulation. Transcranial magnetic stimulation and transcranial direct current stimulation are being increasingly studied as ways to instill changes to the plasticity of brain circuits in stroke victims. In a similar vein, clinicians are beginning to view neuroplasticity as something that can be influenced and protected when working with stroke victims, patients with depression, and people dealing with traumatic brain injury or neurological disorders. So how does brain plasticity impact our daily lives? Among other things, brain plasticity influences people's perception, decision-making, and memory. Humans often best learn from haptic feedback, which fundamentally reshapes our synapses in real time to account for the new information being processed by our bodies. We see this constantly in athletes, doctors, engineers, teachers, and practically every other profession or aspect of our daily lives. As we continuously practice and engage with unique skills and experiences, our brains will become more efficient and our future behaviors and ways of thinking will be shaped in new ways. What is neuroplasticity's impact on cognition and my field of study, aka software engineering and database optimization? Neuroplasticity has a critical effect on cognition as it underscores our learning, logistical thinking, problem solving, and categorical skills. For people delving into the software engineering market, either front-end or back-end work, it is a known fact that the job market has become more competitive than ever. Layoffs are occurring at an unprecedented rate, and the barrier for entry is markedly higher than even half a decade prior. These fields require constant learning, continuous pattern recognition across various coding languages, and adaptation to the ever-changing landscape of our industry in order to keep up with a supposed rat race. The study of neuroplasticity helps exemplify why concerted efforts to practice and refine relevant skills, along with repeated exposure to new tools and environments, can improve performance in our fields. This topic personally struck a chord in me upon first seeing it in the textbook and suggested topics. The aftermath of the pandemic and the results of remote learning/work essentially prevented me from strengthening my brain. I was socially isolated and could frequently feel my mental acuity and social skills begin to regress as a result of the lack of stimuli surrounding me for the better part of 3 years. Obviously, remote work is incredibly convenient and optimal for both businesses and employees. However, with the technology available to us today, we can spend our entire lives at home without truly engaging in strenuous mental exercises. My days tended to be operated on autopilot rather than forcing myself to put forth any kind of real effort into my work or lifestyle. Unfortunately, it took me years to realize that I wasn't using my brain to its fullest potential. So much of the brain's processing power lies in its ability to utilize its plasticity and adapt to the various social interactions and new things I experienced. I found that I had left that power fairly inactive. The most pertinent findings to me in my field of study include the fact that cognitive change can only occur in a meaningful capacity if the brain is being placed under multiple demands of its cognitive processes, such as memory retention, logical thinking, and speed of processing. A quote from the research article by Milbacher states, lower physical activity in adulthood is associated with higher neurodegeneration during aging due to slow production of protective factors and poor cardiovascular and neurovascular health. It is important to note, however, the same study showed that aged adults, when administered the same 6-month aerobic exercise program, did not see any immediate benefits. Testing in elderly rats this time with a 14-month program, however, did offer substantial neurological benefits. This implies that it is significantly easier for middle-aged people to regain neurological health as opposed to the elderly. The idea, use it before you lose it, holds firm. While it may be possible to regain mental strength, it is far more beneficial to be proactive in your adulthood and middle ages to continue exercising and developing your brain. The importance of brain plasticity cannot be overstated. For someone in database administration or even the broader field of software engineering, the knowledge of our brain's plasticity and the ways we can strengthen and maintain our brain health is especially significant. The industry depends on engineers and businesses constantly learning and creating new technologies. Understanding this biological operation can encourage better technical support, monitoring habits, and widespread training protocols. As a database administrator, I not only have to keep up with the practices of my particular discipline so as to not fall behind. Furthermore, I also need to continue learning other skills in related fields in case I'm ever forced to pivot in this ever-changing industry. Training and mentorship tactics in our field may shift as a result of this knowledge. For instance, a database administrator might perform better when met with hands-on repetition, spaced learning, and fewer stressors, particularly in the work environment. People in all professions should be made aware of the plasticity of the brain, as it has direct implications for learning, elderly care, and long-term performance in all aspects of life. In practice, this means senior living assistants and healthcare workers may tailor their approaches specifically to the neuroplasticity of their patients, offering mental and physical exercises to better prevent cognitive decline and offset diseases such as dementia. Finally, some questions for the audience. Can you think of a skill, whether social or practical, that you improved by repetition? How might neuroplasticity explain that change? What are the ways that you have exercised your brain in recent years? Do you plan to continue to do so? Lastly, will your knowledge of the brain and its varying stages of plasticity across all ages affect how you treat your younger siblings or children? How about your elderly parents or grandparents? Thank you. Here are my references.